Picture the most intelligent person you have ever met. Now picture them walking into a room. If what came to mind was someone announcing their own brilliance, solving problems out loud, making sure the room noticed, you pictured the wrong person entirely. Decades of psychological research describe something almost opposite: quiet, watchful, occasionally mistaken for something far less remarkable than what it actually is. Let's walk through 10 psychological patterns found in people who process the world at a different depth than everyone around them. Patterns that look nothing like intelligence and sometimes look like its opposite. Because, by the end, the traits you always assumed were flaws, the overthinking, the hesitation, the distance, may turn out to be the clearest evidence of exactly the opposite. And the final pattern explains why all the others are so often mistaken for flaws in the first place. Chapter 1: The Curse of the Invisible Burden. There is a tragedy in how a high-resolution mind is read by a lower-resolution room: cold, detached, arrogant. These are the words most often reached for, and they are almost always wrong. What looks like distance is usually depth. A mind processing the conversation, and everything beneath it, rarely has bandwidth for performing warmth on command. The burden is invisible because no one asks what it costs to seem unbothered. But being misread in a crowded room is only the first cost. The second is quieter. It happens when the room empties, and the mind is finally, deliberately, alone. Chapter 2: The Sanctuary of the Mind. Highly intelligent people often seek solitude, not from dislike of others, from necessity. Psychologists Satoshi Kanazawa and Norman Lee found something almost inverted. Frequent socializing correlated with lower life satisfaction among highly intelligent people than among the general population. Solitude, for this kind of mind, is not loneliness. It is fuel. But a brain built to recharge in silence is also a brain that struggles to switch off in company, and that restlessness follows it everywhere, even into the quiet. Chapter 3: The Hyper-Connected Network. The mind that never fully rests is not malfunctioning. Psychologist Kazimierz Dąbrowski named this psychomotor overexcitability, a restless internal drive to think that has no natural off switch. Neuroscientist Rex Jung's research has linked higher intelligence with richer connectivity between distant regions of the brain, not simply faster processing, but wider reach. It does not think more quickly. It thinks more widely, all at once, without pause. Chapter 4: The Hidden Current. The myth insists high intelligence means cold detachment. The research is more complicated and more interesting. Dąbrowski called it emotional overexcitability, heightened responsiveness to beauty, injustice, and suffering, documented in gifted populations. Some psychologists argue that high IQ individuals often process emotion cognitively, making intense feeling look like composure. The feeling was never absent. It was only ever well managed. That same management, that same instinct to process before reacting, shows up again in a much less flattering place, in the work that never gets started. Chapter 5: The Paralysis of High Resolution. The work that matters most is almost always the work that starts last. Not from laziness. Researchers studying high achievers have observed a recurring pattern. The mind imagines the finished project before the first sentence exists. Every flaw it might contain, every way it could fall short of a standard the mind can already see. The paralysis is not an absence of care, it is the presence of too much of it. And the same mind that hesitates before starting is often just as hesitant to trust its own conclusions once the work is finally done. Chapter 6: The Symmetry of Certainty and Blindness. Ask a highly intelligent person a question at the edge of their knowledge, and they will often say the 3 words confident people avoid. I don't know. The Dunning-Kruger effect helps explain why. Too little knowledge can hide complexity. Deep knowledge makes certainty harder to hold. These minds may also judge their own work by standards they would never apply to anyone else. The more clearly a person sees the complexity of a subject, the harder absolute confidence becomes to maintain. The doubt was never evidence of lesser intelligence. It was often a signature of greater awareness. And certainty is not the only thing this mind struggles to hold. Attention can be just as restless. Chapter 7. The Restless Frequency. Highly intelligent people often habituate quickly. Familiar stimulation loses its hold, and the mind begins searching for novelty, complexity, or challenge. Repetition that once felt comfortable can begin to feel strangely draining, not because the person is ungrateful or undisciplined, but because the mind has already extracted the pattern and is searching for what comes next. The restlessness is not always a mood. Sometimes it is a mind searching for what it was built to do. Chapter 8. The Plasticity of Truth. Highly intelligent people treat beliefs as working models, not fixed identities. New evidence arrives and the model updates. Without the sense of threat, most people attach to changing their mind. Psychology calls this cognitive flexibility, and it is one of the most consistent markers of advanced reasoning ever measured. It was never about being right. It was always about staying accurate, even at the cost of everything believed yesterday. Chapter 9. The Weighted Observer. In group settings, the highest processing minds tend to watch before they speak. Who defers to whom? Where the real tension lives beneath a pleasant surface. Some research links cognitive ability with greater accuracy in interpreting complex social information. Although that processing may take longer, they are never the slowest thinkers in the room. They are simply the ones gathering the most data before they speak. The silence is mistaken for having nothing to add, when it is usually the opposite. But watching everyone else in a room is only half the pattern. The harder discipline is watching what happens when this same mind turns that same scrutiny on itself. Decades ago, psychologist Leta Hollingworth spent her career studying gifted adults, and she documented a specific kind of ache, the difficulty of finding anyone who could follow a thought all the way to the bottom without needing to turn back. Not arrogance, a quiet, persistent hunger for depth the room rarely offers. It shows up in small moments. A sentence trails off half-finished because the effort of building the rest of it for an audience that will not follow no longer feels worth making. So the mind learns to calibrate downward, to hold back the sharper edge of what it actually thinks, trading full expression for ease of connection, not because the thought was wrong, but because sharing all of it would cost more than the conversation was worth. Every time it does, a version of that mind stays quietly outside the conversation, even while sitting inside it. It is a strange kind of loneliness, not from being unseen, but from being only half seen, again and again, by choice. Put every one of these patterns side by side, and one final, quieter truth becomes impossible to miss. Chapter 10. The Filtered Reality. A very high IQ was never a trophy, a test score, or a party trick. It is a lifelong negotiation with a world built at a lower resolution than the mind navigating it. The solitude, the restlessness, the depth of feeling kept just out of view, the hesitation, the doubt, the distance that was never really distance at all. It was always the price of the edge, the part of the mind that sees more than the world around it was designed to show. Not a malfunction, not a burden to apologize for, simply a resolution the rest of the world has not yet learned to meet. Maybe the goal was never to be understood completely. Maybe it was only ever to stop mistaking the misunderstanding for a flaw. Because the mind that sees more was never broken for seeing it. It was simply early to a resolution the rest of the world is still learning to render, and it was never asking to be fixed, only finally to be read correctly. That, quietly, is where the negotiation ends, not in victory but in peace with the terms.